friends, it's Christy. Welcome to day 1 of my 2018 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be using a brand new stamp set from MFT. This is by the illustrator Stacy Yakula, who will be joining the MFT illustrating team, and the stamp set is called Sweet Holiday Penguins. So I stamped out one of the little penguins, and then I have the little baby penguin inside the gift, and I'm going to be coloring those with some Copic markers. So I decided rather than going with the traditional black, I thought it would be fun to do a little bit of a softer gray. So I'm using C0, C1, C3, and C5. I started with the C5 and laid in all my shadows on the larger penguin, and now I'm going to begin blending those out with the C3. So I added them mostly on the underside of his body and towards the back of his body, and then any place where there's something that would cast a shadow, like the hat on his head or his face against his little arms. And then I'm going to fill in the rest of that space with the C1. So I'm just using the darkest 3 shades on the outer part of his body. So once I'm done with that darker gray on the larger penguin, I'm going to move on to the little baby one. I'm being really sparing with that C5 and just using the very tip of my marker since he's so small. And then I'm going to blend just as I did with the other 2 shades. So for the white parts of their body, I'm using C1 and C0, and I'm doing quick little dabbing motions that are going to add a little bit of texture to them. Since the illustrations make them look so soft and cuddly, I just wanted to reinforce that with those little kind of irregular little bits of shadow and shading. So I did that for both of their bodies on the inside portion. And then I'll add in some R11 to give them some rosy cheeks, which just makes them look extra cute and also is an opportunity to add a bit more color. I'll soften the edges of that with the C0, just so it fades into the rest of their body. And then for their beaks and their feet, I'm using Y17 and YR16. I wanted it to be kind of a yellowish orange, so I'm starting with the YR16 and then pulling that color out into the Y17 just to have that kind of fade into the more golden tone. For the larger penguin's Santa hat, I'm going to use my favorite red combo. It's R29, R39, and R59. Starting with the R59 and doing a little bit of a shadow where it's folded over and also against the white brim of the hat, and then blending that out with the R39 and filling in the rest with the R29. I'm also going to use those same shades to color in the ribbon on the gift that the baby penguin is sitting inside. So I'm just shading from the bottom towards the top. So I use the R59 down at the bottom, and then I'm blending up with the R39, and then I'll finish with the R29, and making sure to do the bow on top of the gift as well. For the white brim of the Santa hat, I'm going to use W00 and W1 and do the same little dabbing motions that I did on their bellies. I did switch to warm grays because I wanted it to look completely different than the penguins' bodies. That wasn't quite enough contrast for me, so I did add in the W3. And I'm just continuing to add some little dots that's going to make it look nice and fluffy. I wanted to stick to a really simple color palette for this card, so I decided to make the gift box black and white stripes, or actually kind of like a dark gray and white stripes. So I'm using those warm grays again to just color in every other line there, using the W5 for the darkest, and then blending with the W3, and then adding a little bit of shading to the white stripes with the W1. And letting that fade off to white. I'm going to take a black Sakura Jelly Roll pen and add a little bit of that to the eyes just to brighten those up. get them to come to life a little bit more. And then I'm also going to take a white Sakura Jelly Roll pen and add a little bit of a shine mark to the wrapping paper of the gift. It's really hard to see on camera, but just adds a little bit of something. And then I'm going to trim these out with the matching dies. For my background, I'm taking some tumbled glass distress ink and the MFT Drifts and Hills stencil, and I've got a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock. So I'm going to lay that stencil down and begin sponging the ink right off of the stencil onto the paper, going in an upward motion. And at the top I'm being pretty heavy-handed because I want that to be my sky. And then I'm going to continue to use that stencil, turning it one turn each as I go, and just easing up on the pressure so that I get a softer look. Because I really just want to have that nice shadow of the different hillscapes in the snow. So I added 3 more hills, and then on the bottom I'm going to skip over a section because I want there to be room for me to stamp a sentiment without overlapping the distress ink. So instead of adding an extra one at the bottom, I'm simply going to sponge the ink onto the bottom of the panel. So that will continue that frosty look all the way across the card from top to bottom, but still give me that space for my sentiment. I'll add that panel into my MISTI, and I'm using Lawn Fawn's Chili Pepper ink to stamp out the Happy, Merry, Joyful Christmas. And I'm going to ink that up twice and stamp that down so I get a really good impression. And I'm going to be very careful not to smear that since it is on the Bristol. We want to give that time to dry. I'm taking some Lawn Fawn Hippo ink to stamp on the inside of my card, and I'm using another one of the penguins and the sentiment that says "Sending Holiday Cheer," and again I stamp that down twice to get a really good impression. I've closed up my card base and held it down in place with a magnet, and now I'm taking a little trio of stars that also comes in this stamp set and stamping it all along the perimeter of the card so that I'll just add some interest to the edge. And I'm kind of turning it as I go to fill everything in using that same Hippo ink. I've die cut the snow globe dynamics from the background panel, and before I remove the tape that's holding that die in place, I'm going to add some glue to the inner portion and adhere that down to a piece of thin white cardstock, and then I will pull off the exterior of that. I'm creating a spotlight shaker scene, so the scene is actually going to be inside a little shaker, and then continue on the outside of the shaker as well. So I'm going to add my little penguins to the inside of the snow globe, and I want to make sure that no part of them is sticking out over the edge or it will get cut off when I add the exterior part back onto the scene. So everything needs to be contained within the parameters of that die cut. So I added both of the little penguins, and now I'm taking some of the winter trees and I'm going to tuck those in behind them. And now I'm ready for my shaker material. I've got some white and iridescent snowflakes. I've got some sparkling clear sequins in several sizes, and I've also got some chunky iridescent glitter. So I'm just going to pile that up right in the center. Then I'm going to grab my background, the rest of it. I've added my shaker pouch inside with some thin 1/8 of an inch score tape, and then I've added some more score tape to the outside of that pouch so that it'll have a nice fast seal. And then I also am adding some liquid glue to the outer edges. I'm going to line that up right over my scene so that it lines up perfectly, and then pop that down into place and make sure everything is nice and sealed. As I mentioned, this is a spotlight shaker scene, so the spotlight is the area that is contained within the snow globe, but I want to continue the scene outside by adding a couple more of these winter trees, and I just die cut those out of some sour apple and noble fir cardstock, and then I added a little bit of the hot cocoa cardstock to the backs of the trees so that you have the tree trunk. So I'm just going to line those up on there, and then I'm going to grab that whole seed and glue that down to my card base. So now you can see how those little stars just add something extra to the outside edge. And that is going to complete our card for today. There's another peek at the inside and a look at all that shaker material in action. I think these images are super adorable and that her illustrations are going to be a great addition to the MFT roster. So if you enjoyed day one of my holiday card series for 2018, please do be sure to give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. There'll be lots more in this series in the coming weeks up through Christmas. So if you'd like to watch day one of the previous 2 years of holiday card series, you can go ahead and click on those now. And thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.